What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the difference between building strength and expressing strength, because they are very different. If you have gone to the gym, you max out, and you're like, fuck, I am nowhere near as strong as I used to be, chances are that's an incorrect statement. It's not that you're not as strong as you used to be, it's that you're not able to express the strength that you once could express. In other words, you have this much strength, but because of all these variables that we're going to talk about, you can't showcase this much strength. Instead, you can only showcase this much strength. Okay, so you probably didn't get weaker, you're just not expressing it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Without further ado, let's dive right into the video. Building strength versus expressing strength. I'm going to use an investment analogy here, a finance analogy. I know, I'm very proud of myself. I came up with this all by myself. So everyone applaud me in the comment section. All right, jokes aside, let's talk about it. So I told you I'm going to use an investment analogy. I want you to imagine that in your bank, you have $100,000, which in today's economy, I don't know if that would even buy you a pack of gum. You have $100,000 in your bank account. Consider this to be your current strength potential, okay? $100,000. All right. Now, naturally, we want to grow the amount of strength we have. We want to increase our strength. We want to grow the amount of money we have in our bank account. But we all know, basic finance, it ain't going to grow just sitting here, right? Even if it was in a high yield savings account, probably ain't even going to beat the rate of inflation. So we got to move it. We got to put it somewhere for it to start growing, right? We've got to put it in a vehicle that's going to increase its value. So usually we invest it. Right now, like all investments, it's a risk. You know, it's not always guaranteed it's going to go up, which is unfortunate, but we try to be as calculated as possible to make sure we make the best decisions with our money as possible. Same thing with strength. We try to come up with a program that's going to make the most sense for us and for our goals, that's actually going to work, right? So if you don't have a program or if you don't have a coach, freaking get one, because you don't want to risk wasting this, right? Okay. All right. Anyway, so you put this in an investment. Boom. At this current moment, you have zero. But now you're going to go from zero on the bank to 100,000 in the investment, right? Because you want this to grow, okay? Now, let's say time passes, and now you've got, we'll go 200,000. Imagine that. Imagine you can go from 100,000 to $200,000, basically risk-free in a matter of moments. Be crazy. Anyway, okay, but you have zero here, right? Guess what you still have here, guys? Zero. Why? Why? Because this isn't liquid yet. You can't spend this yet. This doesn't exist in your bank account, okay? This is the analogy. This is everything I'm trying to tell you right now. The investment side is you trying to build strength. You are allocating your resources in a way that's going to hopefully return on investment, meaning you're going to get stronger as a result of all the resources you're putting towards building that strength, right? All the training, all of that stuff. The problem is when it's here and growing, you cannot spend it because it's here, not here. So if all of your strength, all of your work, all of your resources is tied up in what it takes to get strong, what it takes to grow your money, then you don't have it available to you to spend yet. You have zero. So although I have now I have $200,000, I can't use it. I can't spend it. Grab a different marker. Now this is an extreme example, right? In strength training, it's not this egregious. It's not zero versus 200 grand, right? Meaning you have zero strength accessible to you. That's not usually how it works. In fact, usually how it works is, let's assume that this is actually how much strength you made or how much money you made here, right? In reality, what it's really like is you've got access to 110K, and in your investment still tied up is 90, okay? So what you have access to that you can literally use or spend or showcase or express is 110K. Now, if you've made significant freaking gains, I mean, guys, this is crazy gains right here. If you made significant gains, guess what? You still end up stronger. You still can technically express more than you used to be able to. But very rarely are we able to make that much progress, right? Especially as we become more advanced and more elite. Progress becomes slower, the amount of progress becomes marginal, right? Even though you end up slightly stronger than you were, you still cannot express your full potential because you still have 90 grand wrapped up in your investments. So the goal of the peaking phase, the goal of the type of training and the type of training environment it takes to express our strength is to essentially bring this down to zero so that we can have all 200K in the bank to spend and to use. That's the analogy. I'm telling you, this is freaking genius, guys. All right, this is freaking genius. So yeah, hopefully you guys get the picture. Now, mind you, and this is the last thing I'll say before moving on, just like in finance, in strength, there are processing times, right? It's not so easy to just move 100K straight into your investments, especially if you're trying to be calculated, especially if you're trying to do it with as little risk as possible and making sure, let's say like if we were to correlate this, you're not getting injured and hurt and stuff like that. And it takes time to grow, right? We have to plan for that. Maybe we have a meet in 6 months, but it's gonna take 8 in order for us to go from 100 to 200K, right? So we have to be very strategic, and there's processing times. It's the same thing with our strength training, right? There's processing times. You can't just go from one phase straight to the other. It doesn't work like that. And the rate of progress is different depending on how you train, depending on how focused you are, depending on your nutrition, your sleep, all these things, which we're going to talk about. So again, this analogy is just to kind of show you the difference between building strength versus expressing strength. All right, let's break it down further. What it takes to build strength. Now I have videos on this already, and I have no problem filming more videos specifically on this, but we would be here forever if I broke this down all the way. I'm going to list just a few of the things that we'd want to be thinking about when it comes to building strength. The very first, of course, is going to be muscle hypertrophy. Okay? Muscle hypertrophy. All this is the size of your muscle tissue. Okay? Greg Nuckols, leading, I would say, research scientist, I guess, maybe coach in the space. I don't know. I just remember listening to him growing up. Back when I was in high school and college, I used to listen to him a lot, and he had this analogy. I'm pretty sure it originated from him. He had this analogy when it comes to strength and muscle tissue. The analogy was this. Think of your muscle as a glass, right, like a cup. Think of strength as the water you might fill that glass with. Okay. The idea was the bigger the muscle, the more potential for strength. Not necessarily the stronger you'll be, but the more potential for strength. Why? Because the bigger the glass, the more water you can pour in, right? But mind you, just because you have a bigger glass doesn't mean you filled up that glass all the way to the top with water. So it's both. You need both. It's not enough to just have super big muscles. Otherwise, bodybuilders would be the strongest motherfuckers on the planet. And they're not necessarily, right? Maybe they have the potential to be. They'd have to train for that, which we're gonna get to. So it's not enough to just have size, to just focus on muscular hypertrophy. But hypertrophy is really important because it increases the potential for your strength, okay? Or the amount of strength you could potentially gain or express ultimately, right? Also, muscle hypertrophy is great because then you just look jacked. You actually look strong, which is, who doesn't want that? Okay, so muscle hypertrophy is really important. Then we actually have what it takes to get strong, which is heavy, specific training. This is what creates strength. And we know this from a literature perspective, like assuming your 1 rep max is a true estimate or a true 1 rep max, you're looking to work within like 80 to 90% essentially to build strength, like to actually stack on strength. Why? Because there's a couple things that happen here. Number one, strength is specific. Strength is a skill. What do you want to be strong in, right? For power lifters, for example, squat, bench, deadlift. That's what I want to be strong in. So me getting really strong with a javelin throw or a shot put, it's just useless to me. It doesn't make sense. An overhead press even, like, yes, getting stronger in pieces or portions of the major movements might end up helping my main movements, but the reality is if I want to get stronger at squats, like at some point I'm going to have to do more squats to get stronger. Not only that, I need heavier loads. I need my body to have a reason to get stronger. When the weight gets heavier, my body adapts to that. It says, fuck, we're not strong enough to lift this. We got to get stronger. So my body gets stronger. And that's, there's a piece of that that's like a neural adaptation. Your central nervous system begins to adapt to those loads. It learns how to become more and more efficient and recruit more and more of your motor units throughout your body. Skill, a neural adaptation, a progressive overload. Progressive overload is simply the principle I just talked about, is over time, you're increasing the intensity, you're increasing the difficulty of what you're doing so that your body adapts to it and gets better as a result of it. What is the overarching theme here? The overarching theme of all this, if I'm being honest with you, is hard work. It's hard work, it's intelligent work, but it's hard work. This is the stuff that's going to grow your strength. This is the stuff that's going to get you stronger. It's not flashy, sometimes it's not fun, you're not always gonna be hitting PRs and stuff. It's gonna be hard, it's real work. This is all just hard, quality training, okay? And that's what's required for you to get better. Plain and simple. That's what's required of you. There needs to be a balance, but ultimately, all of this drives what? Fatigue. And fatigue gets a bad rap, especially today, because we got a lot of softies today. We got a lot of fucking snowflakes today. Not around these parts, brother. Fatigue is your best friend in a lot of ways, especially in this phase, especially when it's intelligent, when it's not just you maxing out all the time. That's not really fatigue. That's not doing much for you, okay? You're gonna burn your shit out. But real fatigue, stuff that actually drives progress, is a sign that your body needs to or will recover, hopefully if you give it the space to, and therefore get better, because the adaptations happen during the recovery, in my opinion. You introduce the stimuli to the body, boom. Your body's like, holy, like I gotta get stronger, I gotta get better, I gotta get faster, whatever, right? So how does it respond? It starts to recover, and as it recovers, it builds itself better, bigger, stronger, faster, all of that. That's basically it. I'm simplifying this, but that's basically it, right? Fatigue is a sign, a clear sign, clear indicator that you are training hard, right? Sometimes you can overdo it, absolutely. But good quality training will leave you kind of beat up and tired. The goal, though, is to balance this out with proper recovery. Maybe it's taking more rest days than usual. Maybe it's simply eating more carbs than usual. Like whatever you got to do, recover well so that you can attack each session rested and recovered. So that you can, again, drive up more fatigue and get that training stimulus in so that you can grow. I am a big fan of feeling sore. I'm going to be honest with you. Some people, and this is, I think the literature shows this, that you don't necessarily need to be sore to grow. And I agree with that. But the soreness is a sign that my training was hard enough, that my body is like literally damaged. My body was damaged by the work. So much so that it's like, oh man, like it's sore. To me, that's a great feeling because again, it makes me feel like, okay, I trained the shit out of my muscle. Now it has no choice but to grow and get better. Whereas if I'm not sore, yeah, maybe I'm still growing, but it doesn't give me a surefire way of knowing. You know what I mean? So again, just my 2 cents. Maybe that's a little bit meatheady, but it's just the truth. So fatigue is pretty much the primary driver here. Now, naturally, this is a byproduct of, or the symptom, let's say, of the disease of hard work, hard quality training. We know, especially when it comes to hypertrophy, volume, but not just volume, like basically training to failure is the primary driver of hypertrophy, pushing a muscle to failure. Well, guess what that is? When you reach failure, that's fucking fatigue, like you're getting tired. You see what I'm saying? So this is kind of like the focal point. The problem is, this directly impacts this. Directly. So that's why they need to be separate. And now, great segue, Gavin, let's talk about expression. What it takes to express your strength is a very different environment than what it takes to build it, because you're not going to drive nearly as much muscular fatigue. You will still drive some degree of fatigue in the peak, but it shouldn't be so insane that you're just destroyed all the time. What I've found is there will be central nervous system fatigue. And it's a little bit different, and it should be a little bit different, because, and I want to be honest with you guys, like we don't totally understand the central nervous system as well. We like to say we do, but we really don't understand it as well as we like to say we do. But the central nervous system fatigue is, think of it as like your fight or flight being used too much. A lot of times when athletes peak, that's what happens. And so you're just tired a lot of the time. Your testosterone starts to crash a little bit because you're beating yourself up in training. You're taking heavy ass loads for 1, 2, 3 reps multiple times per week. It's just, you're beating yourself up. And lifting that heavy, 90% plus, 85% plus that often, yeah, I mean, it's hard, dude. It's hard, but it's a different kind of hard. We're not talking about, 12 reps on a hack squat with 8 plates. We're talking about, taking 750 for 2 singles, on deadlift during the week on week 3, and then having to do more on week 4, like that's what we're talking about here. So it's a different type of fatigue. It's an arousal fatigue, like it's very different. And so I hope I'm not butchering this, but basically, this is the type of fatigue you're going to see kind of spike a little bit, but that's okay. That's not the end of the world because we can manage this decently. The problem is if you have a ton of the peripheral fatigue, the muscular fatigue, in addition to this, bro, you're shot, man. You're shot. If you're simply doing too much too often, you just feel it. You're just broken down. Honestly, even this being too high is a problem. So what I believe, when you're peaking, fatigue is like, it's not your worst enemy, but it's up there, man. It's up there. Okay, so let's talk about like what the goals of this is. 3 things that I think are paramount when it comes to peaking. We have skill, psychological readiness, and maximum force production. The skill, again, we already talked about this, but it's that much more important when peaking than it is in building because, well, when you're peaking, the skill is a little bit different. It's different when you have to use great technique for 90% versus 70%. Right? When you're doing a 5x5 with 75% of your 1RM, it's very different than doing 3 sets of 1 with 90% of your 1RM, okay? So the skill becomes that much more specific. It's the skill of expression, not just expression in general, but also expression to the standard of your sport, right? So this becomes that much more important. This is really, really key. Psychological readiness, also really, really key. This isn't just confidence, it's also your ability to literally arouse yourself. It takes a lot of energy to enter your quote unquote fight or flight state. It takes a lot out of you to consistently enter that and come out of that. You got to get used to that. I also mentioned confidence. Confidence is a big deal. So as you're taking heavier and heavier weights for less and less reps, you're going to be practicing what you'll be doing at competition. Right? And that's going to give you more and more confidence. You're going to be training those patterns. And then lastly, maximum force production. This is key. We're not really focused on building tissue and fatiguing the muscle. We're focused on honing what we've built so that it can produce as much force as humanly fucking possible in the movements we want it to produce force in. So the strength that you have to be able to express it. And this is how that happens. Now, the biggest thing that we have to do when we peak is dissipate fatigue. So our goal here is to dissipate fatigue, because if you have too much fatigue during your peak, you're going to be way too beat up and way too destroyed to express your strength. You're just simply not going to be able to. You're literally going to be too tired. Your muscles are going to be too shot. Your body's going to be too shot. You won't be able to do it. So you have to dissipate some of this. That's why when you peak, you simply do less volume. You'll do less movements overall. You'll do less reps, maybe less sets potentially. The idea is that as the intensity climbs, right? And by intensity, really what we're talking about is like objective load. Like as the weight literally increases, when you're handling 87.5%, 90%, right? You're not gonna be able to do 10 reps with that shit. And you shouldn't. The goal isn't to do 10 reps with it because the goal isn't to build muscle here. The goal is to express it. So let's have a really awesome, strong, clean, technically sound single with 90%. Boom, good. Next week, we're gonna take 95%, right? Boom, next week we have the meet, right? Like that's the idea. And so this is a gradual process, but naturally when you are building, volume will be high, the training will be hard. When you're expressing, things like volume will likely be low, okay? When you are building, the training intensity will be high, but the actual objective load might be a little bit lower. Whereas when you are trying to peak your strength and express your strength, it's gonna naturally have to be higher because, again, a big portion of this is the skill and practicing maximum force production. When you're trying to build strength, it's going to be a different environment than when you are trying to peak your strength, when you're trying to express your strength. If you're constantly beating the shit out of yourself, you can't expect yourself to show up at your best. I'm not saying that you can't be tired, you can't be a little bit beat up during your peak or when you're trying to express your strength, but there are different priorities. When you're building strength, the priority, of course, is gonna be hard training, hard volume, right? Like you're really gonna push your body. But when it comes to peaking, the goal is not to push your body. The goal is to practice maximum force production in very specific movements, and that's it, right? Like that's the number one goal. And all the other stuff is just to kind of keep you maintained, kind of keep you intact, right? And so again, when all the focus gets shifted, all of your resources get shifted towards being completely fresh and ready to go for your 3 singles and then your back down sets or whatever, when you're peaking, it's very different than when your number one goal is to completely push your muscles to the nth degree when you're training hard to build. Okay, it's 2 different training environments, just please be mindful of that. Coaching is still open if you would like to apply. I'll leave that link in the description. And also too, shout out to Able, my apparel sponsor. This is an XL. It's honestly pretty nice. I mean, it's been pretty freaking cold in northern Jersey, dude. We've had some crazy snowstorms. Man, dude, let me tell you something. If you train in the cold, it's plus 30 aura. minimum. Matter of fact, I'm gonna say, if you train in the heat year round, I don't ever wanna hear you complain. That's minus 30 aura. All right, I'll see you guys in the next YouTube video.